Welcome back, guys. In today's episode, I'm sharing 10 true disturbing stories about Halloween preparations in Appalachia. By the time the candles go out, you'll wonder if the people are celebrating Halloween or trying to survive it. But before we begin, please consider subscribing. And don't forget to like and share it with your friends. Let me know where you're watching from. Thank you all. Now, let's start. My Uncle Les asked if I could help get the old church hall ready for the Halloween potluck down in Henslow Ridge. Everybody brought slow cookers full of chili and meatballs. Toddlers in pumpkin costumes ran around the folding tables, and some teenager always got caught spiking the punch. I'd gone every October since I was a kid, but this was the first time they were letting the younger folks handle the setup. Uncle Les made it sound like a big honor, handing me the spare key like he was passing down a family heirloom or something. I was also supposed to meet a girl there. We'd been texting for a couple weeks, and this was supposed to be the first time we actually hung out in person. The plan was to carve pumpkins together, maybe flirt a little, maybe sneak off behind the hall for a beer after the grown-ups cleared out. I was honestly more excited about that part than the whole decorating thing. The church itself sits way down in a hollow about 15 minutes off the main road. You wouldn't even know it was there unless someone told you. It's surrounded by woods on all sides, no houses in sight, just a little gravel pull-off and a sagging wooden sign out front with Henslow Ridge Community Church carved into it. No one lives out that way anymore. There used to be a few homes, but a landslide about 10 years back took out the McCarter place and scared everyone else off. The hill's still unstable in some spots. You'll see a tilted fence post here or there sticking out of the brush like a broken tooth. Still, they keep using the church for Halloween and other fall stuff. Uncle Les always said it was tradition, said the dead don't bother walking so far down a hill. I never asked him where he heard that. Anyway, I drove out just after sunset. Had a bag full of cheap decorations from the dollar store and a box of tea lights for the pumpkins. No cell reception out there, which I knew, but I still kept checking my phone like it would suddenly find a signal. The parking area was a mess, just gravel and runoff mud from the rain earlier that week. I had to leave my truck halfway up the hill and walk the rest. My boots were soaked by the time I got to the church door. The key stuck in the lock like it didn't want to turn, but it finally gave with a loud click. Inside, it was colder than outside, like walking into a basement that hadn't been opened in months. The air was still and heavy. The windows were fogged, but not from heat. It was more like the glass itself was sweating. I figured it was just the damp. Everything out there gets a little weird when it rains. I started unpacking stuff onto the folding tables. There's a kitchen in the back of the hall, small, with yellowing counters and a fridge that doesn't really work. They use it to store extra chairs, decorations, whatever. I went back there to grab some plastic tablecloths with pumpkins on them. Took maybe a minute, tops. When I came back out, one of the skeletons I'd left on the main table was on the floor. It was the kind with jointed limbs held together by metal rings. Looked like it had been twisted, not just fallen twisted. One arm was wrapped up around its head like someone had tried to tie it in a knot. I stared at it for a second. Then I laughed, kind of just to break the silence. Bent down, untangled it, and put it back on the table. Told myself it probably fell and got caught on something, but still, I felt, watched. Not in the paranoid way, just aware. The kind of quiet out there isn't like town quiet. There's no cars, no voices, not even birds after sunset. It's like the woods just stopped breathing. I kept busy. Hung up the paper streamers, arranged the candles in little clusters, stretched out the fake cobwebs along the walls. I was halfway through carving the first pumpkin when the lights went out, all at once. No flicker, no warning, just dead silence and darkness. I froze. My first instinct was to check my phone, but it was already under 20%, and the flashlight barely cut through the dark. That building hasn't had a proper breaker box inside for years. Uncle Les told me everything was routed to a shed out back, about 30 yards down a trail behind the church. I remembered seeing it when I was younger. It had been locked up tight with a rusty padlock and half covered in ivy. I didn't want to go out there, not even a little, But I also wasn't about to sit in that dark hall with nothing but a dying phone light and a half-carved pumpkin. So I lit one of the candles and headed for the back door. The trail was worse than I remembered, mostly mud and broken stones with soggy leaves that squelched underfoot. I held the candle low, trying to keep the flame from blowing out. The shed door was open. Not just unlocked wide open, like someone had left in a hurry and didn't bother closing it behind them. I stepped inside. The air was stale. The fuse box was on the far wall. All the switches were in place. Nothing tripped. Nothing broken. No water damage, no signs of animals, nothing weird. Until I turned around. Someone was standing just beyond the trees, still, watching. I couldn't see their face, but I could tell they were facing me. I called out, thinking maybe it was a kid from the youth group messing around. They didn't answer, didn't move, just stood there. I didn't wait. I walked, quick, steady, not running back to the church. Didn't look back until I reached the door. When I finally turned, the figure was gone. I locked the door behind me and checked the light switch again. Nothing. No power. Just the candle and my phone, now flashing the low battery warning. I tried to focus on the pumpkin again. She was supposed to show up around 9. I figured she'd be there soon, so I sat by the window and carved, kept my hands busy. Tried not to listen too hard to the quiet. After about 20 minutes, there was a knock at the front door. 3 knocks. Even. Measured. I called her name. Nothing. I walked over and looked through the peephole. No one there. Not even a shadow. I opened the door, stepped onto the porch. Still nothing. The woods were dead silent. I turned to go back inside. That's when I saw it. Another jack-o'-lantern. Right next to the one I'd been carving. I hadn't seen it before. Hadn't made it. It was lit. Candle flickering steady inside. The face was wrong. Just 3 holes. 2 for eyes, 1 for a nose. No mouth. No expression. Just blank. I stood there staring at it for what felt like forever. Then my phone buzzed. A text from her. She said she'd gotten a flat tire outside of town, still waiting on her brother to come help. She hadn't even left yet. Said she probably wasn't going to make it. I didn't respond, didn't even think. I grabbed my keys and left everything on the table. I didn't bother blowing out the candles. Just walked fast, not running up the muddy slope to my truck. When I got halfway up, I looked back. There were 3 figures now, standing at the edge of the woods just behind the shed, still as statues, watching. They didn't follow, didn't move. I got in the truck, started it, and drove straight to Uncle Les's place. Handed him the church key. Told him I was out for the year, didn't say why, didn't bring up the second pumpkin, didn't ask who brought candles before I got there. And I never went back for the decorations. I was 23 when it happened. The pumpkin order for Fall Fest got screwed up again, so I offered to drive out and help my cousin Milo carve a bunch of extras. It wasn't the first time something like that happened. Last year, someone double counted, and we ended up with 22 uncarved pumpkins rotting behind the high school. So this time I figured, whatever, I'd just pitch in. Milo lives out past Harrow Creek, all the way up Black Hollow Ridge, this steep 1-lane gravel road that hugs the side of the mountain like it's trying to throw you off. Even in daylight, it feels sketchy. One wrong turn and you're tumbling into a ravine with no cell signal and maybe 2 bars of daylight left to scream into. But I didn't want to leave him to do it alone. By the time I made it to his place, the sun was already behind the trees and everything looked sort of flattened out. Not dark yet, just that weird gray where it's not quite evening, but it's definitely not day anymore. Milo's cabin is small. Like, blink and you'll miss it small. Just a slouching wooden box with a patched roof and a porch that's seen better decades. Our great-uncle built it sometime in the 40s, and I think Milo's been keeping it together with duct tape and determination. There was one porch light flickering above the door, but it didn't really help. More like it just reminded me how dark the woods were getting. He met me at the door, with his sleeves rolled up and his hands coated in pumpkin guts, looking like he just performed surgery on a squash. He had a cigarette tucked behind one ear, and his flannel looked like it had been used to mop up a crime scene made entirely of orange pulp. We brought the pumpkins inside, 20 of them, stacked in the back of my truck, and spread them out across this big old oak table he keeps near the front window. He always carves the creepiest faces. Not fun ones either. Like sunken eyes, jagged mouths, teeth too long for the face. I swear he does it just to mess with the neighborhood kids. I kept mine simple. Triangles for eyes, big open grins. The kind of jack-o'-lantern that says, "Hi, I'm safe and festive." We'd been carving for maybe an hour, elbow deep in pulp, when he stood up and said he was heading to the shed to grab more candles. Said he was low and didn't want the kids to end up with hollow pumpkins that didn't glow. He pointed out that the trail was steep and slick after dark, and he didn't want me cracking my skull open for the sake of ambiance, so he went alone. I stayed behind, hands sticky, carving another happy face into a lopsided gourd. The room got quiet without him. Just me, the soft scrape of the carving tool, the occasional plop of seeds hitting the floor. 10 minutes passed. Maybe 15. I checked the window once or twice, expecting to see his flashlight bobbing up the trail. Nothing. Then the front door creaked open. Slow, like full-on horror movie timing. I looked up, expecting Milo to walk in and make some comment about my fourth identical pumpkin face, but no one came through. Just the sound of the hinges. I wiped my hands on a towel and stood up, half convinced he was trying to mess with me. I stepped to the door, opened it wider, and looked down. Porch was empty. No flashlight down the trail. No wind. No footsteps. Just nothing. I waited there for a second, holding on to the doorknob like that was going to protect me. Then I heard it. A knock. But not on the front door. Behind me. Inside the house. I turned around and listened. Nothing. Then again, knock. Soft. From the hallway closet. It wasn't loud. More like testing. Just a light tap. Then silence. Then another tap. I called out for Milo. Tried to sound casual, but it cracked. Nothing came back. I took a step toward the closet. Then another. I wasn't thinking, oh, I should go check this out like some idiot in a movie. I was thinking, if I stand here, something is going to come out anyway. So I moved. But before I even got close, I saw them. Footprints, wet ones, coming in from the front door, which was still closed, and leading across the room right past me. Bare feet. Too small for Milo's. Too many. Like someone had walked in circles over and over again, never leaving. I froze. Didn't touch the closet, didn't open a thing. I backed up, grabbed my phone off the counter, checked it, no signal, just that friendly little SOS only in the top corner. Tried calling anyway, straight to voicemail. I looked back at the footprints. They didn't stop at the closet. They kept going, past the bathroom, right up to the basement door. The latch was undone. The door slightly open. I leaned down just enough to see the edge. And that's when I heard it. Breathing. Not talking, no words. Just a slow inhale, like someone drawing in air through their teeth and then holding it. Like they were crouched right under the crack, listening. I stepped back, slower this time, careful not to make any sound. Grabbed one of the pumpkin knives from the table. Just something to hold. It was plastic. Dull, barely more than a toy, but it felt better than nothing. My hands were shaking so bad I had to switch grips twice. I went to the front door again, opened it, ready to bolt. And that's when I saw him, Milo, walking up the trail, holding a box under one arm, flashlight in the other. Totally normal. I ran out, met him halfway, told him someone was inside, that the closet knocked, that the basement was open. He stopped and looked at me like I'd grown another head. Then he said something I haven't stopped thinking about. I had to use my keys to open the door just now. I blinked. He held them up, said the door was locked when he got there. Had to jimmy it. I followed him back inside, feeling like I was about to vomit. Everything looked exactly the same. No footprints. No open closet. No whispering. Just pumpkins. Tools. That weird half-finished grin I'd been working on. He looked around once, shrugged, and told me I probably just spooked myself. Said the place gets in your head when you're alone. But the whole time he was talking, he kept glancing at the closet. Just once or twice. but I saw it. We carved until almost midnight, didn't talk much after that. I was still shaking. He offered to let me crash there, but I turned it down. Told him I'd rather brave the ridge than sleep in a house where the walls breathe. Before I left, he handed me a pumpkin I hadn't seen before. Said, "Here, take this one." It was weird. The face didn't match the others. It wasn't sharp or scary, just sort of off, like someone had tried to copy a jack-o'-lantern without ever seeing one. I asked when he carved it. He looked me right in the eye and said, "You were the only one here." Didn't even blink. I didn't argue. Just got in my car with that thing sitting in the passenger seat, staring at me the whole ride down the mountain. When Mom said it was my turn, she didn't even look up from the counter, just kept tying jars of peppered beans with butcher's twine like we were talking about the weather. "It's your turn for Ebb this year," she said. No pause, no warning, just that. In our family, everybody helps Ebb once. Exactly once. It's not written down anywhere, but it's one of those things that's just understood. You go up Powder Ridge before Halloween, help him with what needs doing, then come back down and try not to think about it too hard. People don't ask questions after. They don't trade stories. They just give you a kind of nod like, "Yeah, you made it through." And if you ask about it before your turn, they all say the same thing. "You'll understand when it's time." Powder Ridge isn't even on a real map. Just a skinny stretch of woods and shale, with old barbed wire fences and deer trails so narrow they might have been carved out by ghosts. At the very top sits Ebb's house, if you can call it a house. It's half collapsed, half stitched together with whatever he's had on hand over the years. Part log, part sagging pine boards, part rusted aluminum siding that flaps when the wind's bad. I biked up with a canvas sack across my back. Mom had packed it herself. A tin of black candles. 3 loaves of bread wrapped in wax paper. 1 jar of cider vinegar. And a lump of salted butter, which she handed over with this tight-lipped look that said she didn't approve, but wasn't about to explain why. When I got there, Ebb was already on the porch, snapping dried corn in his lap and letting the husks tumble into a basin at his feet. He didn't say hi. Didn't even nod. Just pointed with 2 fingers toward the yard. "Markers were there," he said. "You draw this time." He didn't have to explain. I already knew what he meant. Everybody knows about the markers, even if they pretend not to. It's one of those things that lives in the corners of family talk, never spoken about directly, but always just under the surface. I rounded the porch and saw them immediately. 4 long chicken bones, smooth and white like they'd been sun-bleached for years. Each one had a twist of twine tied around the thicker end and a smear of red ink near the tip. They looked almost clean, like tools. I didn't hesitate. I knelt and started burying them at the 4 corners of the house, each one point down, like tiny ivory stakes poking up from the dirt. "That's how you keep the lines clean," Ebb says. "Keeps the old ones out." The next job was the oil. He handed me a rusted tin with a cork stopper soft as a sponge. Told me to use exactly 3 drops on every window. Not 2, not 4, 3. The inside of his house was quieter than anything I've ever experienced. Not the kind of quiet where you can hear the wind or the creak of wood. This was different. Still, like everything had been paused, like the air was holding its breath. I went from window to window, dripping that thick, dark oil onto each pane. The smears it left were cloudy, greasy, but Ebb said they mattered. "Clear glass is an invitation," he muttered behind me. "Lets them see in." We spent the rest of the afternoon building what he called scare rows, not scarecrows. He was very clear about that. "Scare," he said. "Rows. 1 for every year he's lived. That's 84. We only got 7 done before the light started to shift. Each one was made from cane poles and dry corn husks. No heads, no faces, just hollow sleeves and pants, stuffed full of straw and stitched shut with bits of old wire. They looked like the remains of people who just melted out of themselves. I asked where the rest would go. He just said, "After supper, if they'll let us." Dinner wasn't really dinner. just a piece of bread soaked in vinegar. No butter. He watched me eat it like he was waiting to see if it made me choke. Food makes you visible, he said. Butter's too loud. Shouldn't have brought it. After dark, he didn't light a single lamp. Said flame draws. Said silence and patience were the only defenses worth anything. He handed me a single black candle for my room. If it goes out, he said, you do not open the door. The wick lit the second I set it on the windowsill. No match. No lighter, just heat. Like it remembered what fire felt like. I lay down in my clothes. Boots still on. Couldn't even bring myself to close my eyes for more than a few seconds at a time. Around midnight, the candle flickered. Then it went out. No wind, no draft. Just gone. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. A few seconds later, I heard the floorboards groan outside my door. First light, then heavier. One step, then another. Then came the breathing. It didn't sound human. It was wet, ragged, like something trying to breathe through water. It had a kind of slurping hitch at the top of each inhale, like its lungs weren't built right. Then it knocked. 3 slow, dull thuds. Then a voice. Boy, it sounded like ebb. Almost. But underneath, there was something else. This gritty, scraping sound, like stones being turned over in thick mud. I'm cold, it said. I didn't answer. Didn't flinch. Just stared at the door. The knob turned once, stopped. Then came the sound of something pressing against the door. Not with weight, more like hunger. Like the door was the only thing between it and something it wanted to be inside. Then, I left my skin outside, it said, almost casual. Let me in to warm it. The silence after that was worse than the voice. I didn't move. Then I heard something outside, a sharp sound clack, then another, like something small and hard-hitting stone. The bone markers, they'd fallen, all of them, clatter, snap, then silence. When morning light finally started to slip through the curtain, I sat up slowly. Every joint in my body felt locked. My hands had gone numb from gripping the blanket too hard. I opened the door. There was nothing there. Downstairs, Ed was sitting by the hearth like he hadn't moved all night. He didn't even turn his head when I walked in. But his eyes didn't blink, didn't twitch. He asked how I slept. I told him I slept fine. He didn't look like he believed me. They always knock once first, he said. That's for your ears. The next 3 are to check your fear. I helped him finish the rest of the scarecrows, 77 more. We lined them all around the property, just standing there, like a crowd waiting for something to happen. Each one looked like it might move if you turned your back. Before I left, he handed me a small jar filled with something like black sand. It shimmered when the sun hit it. Don't use it till you need it, he said. And if you think you need it, it's already too late. That was last October. He didn't come down for salt this year, didn't send word. I asked my Uncle Dell if he'd heard anything. He just shook his head. Said nobody goes up Powder Ridge after dark, not even the postman. Still, I keep watch, especially around this time of year. October always brought out something strange in our little mountain town. Not spooky strange, just hyper-focused. We didn't go overboard for Christmas. Hardly anyone put up lights for New Year's. But Halloween? That was sacred. Every house, even the half-abandoned cabins up the ridge, had a jack-o'-lantern out front. Some porches had a dozen. Fences got tangled with fake cobwebs. Old lanterns swung from the trees, and people pulled out decorations they'd kept boxed up for decades. Even the grumpiest folks, the ones who never waved back at you on Main Street, ended up carving a pumpkin. It was sort of an unspoken rule, one you didn't break. All those pumpkins, once they were finished, got lined up on the long tables at the community hall. That place, Vernon Hall, was the oldest building in town. It sat where the road curved before climbing up the last hill toward the forest line. Small thing. 2 square rooms, 1 long hallway, and a crawl space no one had touched in years. Dusty wooden beams, mismatched floorboards, old metal vents that hissed even when the heat wasn't on. Everything about it felt slightly out of date. That's where we kept the town's Halloween stash. Cardboard skeletons from the 80s, tombstones cut from plywood peeling gray paint, fake rats, tangled lights, strands of plastic ivy so faded they looked like brittle seaweed. The crawl space under the floor, more like a shallow trench, held most of it. You had to crouch if you ever went down there, and honestly, no one really did anymore. I volunteered that year to help shut things down after the last prep night. It wasn't a huge deal, just meant I'd lock up once everyone left. I liked being the last one there. With everyone gone, the building took on this calm, empty stillness that felt good, predictable. You could hear every creak of the old boards, every shift in the wind outside. No yelling kids, no chatter about who was making what for the bake sale, no one arguing about whether plastic skeletons were tacky, just me and the leftovers of everyone else's energy. That night started like any other. We showed up after work, dumped bags of decorations on the tables, and picked our usual spots. Jake, he runs the gas station on Elm, brought his 2 kids, who mostly got underfoot. Tabby from the diner strung up her usual army of paper skeletons, balancing on a wobbly stool that probably should have been replaced 10 years ago. We laughed, made fun of how uneven the banner letters looked, passed around lukewarm cider in foam cups. It was normal. It was routine. By a little after 9, most of them had filtered out. Jake wrangled his twins into the truck. Tabby yawned dramatically and called it a night. The last few people waved and teased me about guarding the pumpkin army, then drove off down the mountain road, headlights vanishing one by one. I was left alone, sweeping up the mess. Pumpkin guts, orange and slimy, scattered around the folding tables. Plastic spiders stuck in odd places. Someone had left a half-eaten cookie on the windowsill. I tossed it all, dragged a couple chairs into stacks, and felt that familiar silence start to settle. I liked it, until I stepped outside. I was heading to my car to grab another trash bag roll. The gravel cracked under my boots. It was cold enough that I could see my breath, and there was this one bark from far off, just a single sound, then nothing. That's when I saw the footprints. They were pressed into the soft mud near the edge of the lot, just past where the gravel thinned out. Small, bare, no shoe tread, no socks. Just 5 little toes and narrow heels sinking into the dirt. They led from the ditch, right up to the side door of the hall. And they weren't mine. I crouched, squinting at them. They weren't fresh edges already drying, but they hadn't been washed away by the last rain either. Like they'd been waiting there, held in place. I looked around, half expecting to see someone standing by the tree line, maybe watching me. But there was nothing, no rustling, no sound but the wind. I stood up, told myself it was probably one of the neighborhood kids. They like to dare each other to sneak around the hall this time of year. Still, something about those prints made my chest feel tight, like I was staring at something that didn't quite belong. I went back inside. The moment the door clicked behind me, every light died. The string lights, the lamps, the plug-in pumpkin near the coat rack. Gone, total darkness, except for the faint orange haze drifting in from the porch. I stopped just inside the doorway. No hum from the old radio. No flickering emergency light over the exit. Nothing. My first thought was the breaker. It tripped all the time. The building was basically allergic to moisture. I pulled out my phone and flicked on the flashlight. The narrow beam cut through the dark, lighting up chairs, tangled wires, and the row of carved pumpkins still lined against the back wall. All of them were dark, except one. It glowed with this weird, unsteady light. Not a soft candle flicker. This was harsher, like a bulb trying to fail, flaring in short bursts. Like it was beating. I hadn't lit any of them. We carved them earlier, but the candles were still in a bag on the counter. I moved closer. Something about that one pumpkin looked wrong. The face wasn't one we'd done. No fun triangle eyes. No silly grin. Just 2 blank, round holes and a slit of a mouth, uneven and jagged. The surface looked wet. The cuts were raw, like they'd been made recently. Inside, instead of a tea light, there was a tiny bulb wired into a dark, boxy power pack. Looked like the kind hunters used to rig up trail cameras. I didn't touch it, didn't even lean close, just stood there watching it flicker. Each pulse lined up with my heartbeat, or maybe my breath. It felt like it was sinking to something inside me. Then I heard it, a chair scraping. I whipped the flashlight toward the sound. One of the folding chairs by the window had shifted, just an inch out of place. I stared at it. Had I bumped it? Had I bumped it? Couldn't remember. I told myself I had. Then I checked one of the outlets and tried plugging in a light string. Nothing. The outlet worked, I knew it did, but the cord cut clean through. Like someone used a knife. That's when I felt it. The room didn't get colder. It just got heavier, like the air was pressing in, waiting. I grabbed my bag, walked toward the exit, stopped. Every pumpkin on the table had turned. All of them now faced me. They'd been scattered earlier, some sideways, some not even finished. Now, perfect lime. Everyone glowing with that same soft, pulsing orange. The light moved slow, rhythmic, deliberate. I took one step back. That's when something shifted under the last table. A soft thump. Then the sound of a breath drawn in too fast, too sharp. Then I saw it. A hand. Thin, long, bare, dirty fingers. It flexed once on the floorboards, then slipped back under the table and disappeared. I ran. Didn't call out, didn't turn around. I hit the door so hard it bounced off the wall behind me. The cold air outside felt like a slap. Gravel sprayed behind me as I sprinted to the car. My hands shook so bad it took 3 tries to get the keys in. When the engine caught, I slammed it into reverse. Headlights lit up the hall's front steps. And there it was, another pumpkin, brand new, sitting right on the top step. Same slit-mouth face, but this one wasn't glowing from a bulb. Something inside it moved, not fast, just slowly, like cloth turning in a breeze that wasn't there. The light pulsed, faster now, like it was sending a message. I drove. Didn't slow down until I hit the main road. Even then, I kept checking the rearview mirror, half convinced I'd see a figure on the shoulder, walking slowly, carrying one of those pumpkins. Next morning, I came back, brought the mayor, 2 volunteers. Didn't tell them everything, just said someone might have broken in. We unlocked the door. Everything inside, spotless. Every decoration boxed up. Every chair stacked. Every cord untangled. Except one. In the center of the floor sat that pumpkin. Same carved face. Still damp, still blowing. But there was no battery pack, no wires. The light came from somewhere deeper, and it pulsed weaker whenever someone got too close. We dumped it behind the shed, figured that'd be the end of it. 2 days later, it was back, sitting dead center on the table. Same face, same light. The town thought it was funny, said I must have been dreaming or maybe just stressed. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard under that table. This year, I didn't volunteer, didn't decorate, didn't go near the hall. It was October, and in Harlan Hollow, that means Halloween season's already in full swing. Not just a night here, more like a month-long ritual. Folks around here take it seriously. You'll see carved pumpkins rotting on porches by the second week, scarecrows made from actual clothes that belonged to someone's granddad, bowls of candy duct taped to mailbox posts for the kids who hike the back roads. Even the older folks hang paper ghosts and bats under their porch roofs, letting them sway in the wind like they've been doing it for generations. And every single year, the big town celebration is held at the Merritt Barn. It's this massive gray building halfway up Carver Hill, leaning, groaning, older than most of the graves in the cemetery. Nobody uses the land anymore. Too rocky to farm, too far out for real development. The road turns to gravel about a quarter mile before you get there, and then it's just trees and silence. Mayor Jepson always says the barn has strong bones. What he means is, we can't afford to build something new. It looks like it could drop flat if a storm ever hit it sideways. Still, tradition. I've been helping decorate it since I was 16. This year, for the first time, I was running the show. All of it. Setup, lighting, decor, sound system. No committee watching over my shoulder. Honestly, I liked it that way. I've never been much of a group project guy. Give me a job, leave me alone, and I'll do it better than 5 people trying to compromise. And the barn's got a weird kind of peace to it during the day. Cool air, the smell of old hay. Birds making noise outside, but nothing ever inside. Quiet like that tends to calm me. This year, they wanted to shake things up. Old country Halloween, someone on the council said. They wanted a throwback theme, pre-commercial Appalachian style. No bright plastic skeletons or spider webs from the dollar store. They gave me this rough list: hand-tied corn husks, real scarecrows, candles in mason jars, and wooden masks made by some local craftsman. They told me the masks might show up a little late. Except when I got to the barn on the first setup day, the masks were already there, 12 of them. Just sitting there on a folded tarp beside a few hay bales. Not boxed, not labeled, not wrapped in paper or plastic, just arranged. Neat, almost respectful. They were darker than I expected, almost black, like they'd been rubbed with oil or smoke. Each one had a long jaw and wide eye holes, shaped a little off-center, like someone had been carving from memory. Around the mouth of each mask, someone had scratched little rows of pointed teeth. Too small to be animal teeth, too messy to be artistic, unsettling really. No note, no receipt, no signature burned into the wood, nothing. Just 12 masks waiting for someone to notice them. I didn't know the carver, and none of the committee folks said they'd drop them off. I moved them to a corner and got to work stringing lights. After a few hours, I started noticing it. Every time I looked up from what I was doing, the top mask seemed to have shifted slightly, just a bit, angled a few inches to the left, staring in a way it hadn't been before. I tried not to dwell on it. Old barn, drafts, shadows playing tricks. By the time I finished for the night, it was already close to 10. I stayed back to check the lights. Pulled the cord from the outlet to see what was still working. Every strand flicked on, soft orange glows flickering all around the rafters. Thing is, I hadn't plugged anything in yet. I checked the outlet, still taped over from last year's setup. Tape intact, cord hanging loose. I walked over to one of the bulbs and touched it. Cold. No warmth at all. I turned off my flashlight just to see. Still glowing. All of them. I left them on and got out of there without touching a thing. Locked the barn behind me. Didn't tell anyone. Next morning I came back. Lights were off again. Everything looked normal, except in the center of the floor, someone had laid a single corn cob, perfectly husked, lined up straight with the grain of the floorboards, and beneath it, damp earth, like the ground had been watered from underneath. But it hadn't rained. I checked the weather report later. Clear skies, no dew. Then I noticed the footprints, bare, wide. Each toe splayed out a little too far, almost like claws. They went from the back entrance to the middle of the barn, and then stopped. No prints leading back out. The lock hadn't been touched, and I'd had the only key on me all night. I told Sherry, one of the other volunteers, born and raised here. She didn't seem surprised, didn't even raise an eyebrow. Just said, "Don't stay there after dark, not alone." She said it with this flat tone, like she wasn't trying to scare me, just stating a fact. Then she walked away. Didn't ask questions, didn't joke, just walked off. That night, I was behind schedule again. The sun dropped fast, and the hills swallowed what little light was left. I had the speakers half set up, was running a test loop of static when I heard it. A voice, whispering, clear as anything. "Don't dress them. Low. Dry. Male, I think." I froze. The mic was sitting unplugged beside me. No wires connected. Then it came again, slower, more deliberate. "Don't dress them." I didn't bother unplugging anything. I just left. Everything, tools, wires, even my clipboard still on the floor. Next day, the masks were gone. Gone. In their place stood 5 scarecrows. Old clothes, lopsided stuffing, standing in a crooked line along the back wall. and each one was wearing one of the masks, tied tight with twine that looked wet, still glistening with sap. The air inside the barn felt heavier than usual, thicker. Still no sign of who did it. Still just me with the keys. Later, Sherry came back to drop off some spare decorations. She froze when she saw the scarecrows, went pale, said the masks looked like something her grandfather used to call wardens, said they weren't meant for people to wear. They were carved to keep the dead from crossing into living places. Warnings, boundaries, boundaries. She left without touching anything, didn't even unload the rest of the supplies, didn't come back. I barely slept that night, and every noise outside felt like it was creeping closer. Around 2 in the morning, I heard steps on the porch. Heavy, slow, dragging. I didn't move, just stared at the ceiling, heart beating so hard I thought it might give me away. No knock, no voice. Just steps, then silence. When I checked the next morning, no prints in the frost, nothing, like nobody had been there. 2 days before Halloween, I went back to finish what I could. I opened the barn doors and stopped cold. The scarecrows were gone. Hay bales had been shoved into a wide circle, and across the far wall something had been scrawled, thick, dark, dripping down the boards, "De-rest them." All the costumes I'd brought, capes, cloaks, cheap plastic masks, were scattered, torn. Some burned at the edges. Some stretched like they'd been forced onto things the wrong size. I couldn't clean up. My hands were shaking too hard to grip anything. Then I heard it, a soft shuffle, something dragging along the floor behind the hay. I stepped back, watched as 5 heads rose, one after another, each wearing a mask, each body draped in the charred remains of costumes I'd left boxed up. They moved awkwardly, too stiff. Their arms jerked. One of them stepped forward and its knee bent backward, wrong, animal-like. Another turned its head too fast and rasped, "It's time to dress them," voice like wood cracking. I ran, didn't stop until I hit my truck, tossed the keys on the passenger seat and drove. Told the mayor someone had trashed the place, said it was vandalism, unsafe. He didn't push for details. We moved the festival to the churchyard. Halloween night, everything went fine. Kids in costumes, laughter, candy. But I kept looking up toward Carver Hill, and sometime past midnight, I imagined it. A soft orange light pulsing from the barn windows. Every October, my hometown of Merrow Creek basically turned into a Halloween postcard. The whole place got swallowed up by decorations and tradition. You couldn't walk a block without seeing a scarecrow, a cornstalk, or some kind of weird antique thing someone pulled out of an attic. People said it all started as a harvest blessing back in the 1800s, something about warding off bad luck for the winter. Now, it was a month-long festival. Pumpkins lined the road into town like mile markers. Fake spider webs clung to gas pumps and porch swings. Even the telephone poles wore little cardboard bats, flapping in the breeze like they belonged there. And everyone had a part to play, whether you wanted to or not. I'd just moved back after college, still half convinced I'd only stay through fall. Thought it might be good to help out and remind people I was still one of them. You grow up in a small place like Merrow Creek, and you leave for a few years. People start treating you like you need reintroducing. So I said yes when Ruth Callahan handed me a clipboard. She ran the festival, always had. Ruth was one of those women who never aged, just hardened slightly over time. The kind of person who remembered your birthday, your parents' birthdays, and your second-grade teacher's middle name. She gave me scarecrow duty, said it was an honor. Something about it being the oldest tradition. There were 7 of them, one for each of the founding families, lined up on the ridge that overlooked town. I remembered them from when I was a kid, but I'd forgotten how big they were. Or maybe they hadn't been this big back then. They stood nearly 7 feet tall now, built like sentinels. Not the usual bundles of straw with floppy hats. These had real structure, wooden frames, thick sapling arms, rope joints. Their heads were burlap sacks tied off like oversized candy, except for one. That one didn't match. Its head was made from a faded gray feed sack, stitched closed with thick black twine in these weird, uneven patterns. The eye holes weren't circles. They were long, narrow slits. And the mouth, it wasn't stitched like the others. It was a jagged line that curved downward on one side, like it had tried to smile and gave up halfway through. Looked like something that had been grinning too long. Too hard. I asked who made it. No one said a word. Ruth glanced at it and shrugged. Said it must have been from last year's batch, probably just got mixed in. But when I tried to move it, it didn't feel like the others. It was heavy. Not awkward heavy, but dense, like there was more than straw inside. When I tilted it upright, something shifted inside metal maybe. There was a solid clank. It almost slipped right out of my hands before I got it upright. I looked around for help. Everyone just stood there, watching. No jokes. No eye contact. That night, I stayed up carving pumpkins at the farmhouse. The kitchen window looked out toward the ridge, just enough space between the trees to see the silhouettes if the moon was out. Around midnight, I spotted a light moving up there. Not flickering, like a flashlight or lantern, just steady. It drifted from one scarecrow to the next, slow and smooth, like someone checking each one in order. Then, it disappeared. I told myself it was Ruth. Made sense. She was always the last to leave. But when I asked her the next morning, she said she hadn't gone up there. Said nobody had. I didn't press. We had work to do. But when I got to the ridge, something was different. One of the scarecrows had been moved, dragged forward a few feet like it had leaned into the hill. There were grooves in the dirt behind it, twin ruts, like someone or something had pulled it by the legs, then tried to put it back and missed. The ground under the others looked like it had been stirred. Soft patches where the dirt had sunk in slightly, like something had shifted beneath the surface. Ruth said it was probably wind. But the air had been still. Even the leaves hadn't moved. That afternoon, the air up there started to smell wrong. Not strong, but sour, sweet and rotted, like old fruit left too long in a basement. No one mentioned it, but I saw the way people turned their heads away or breathed shallow through their mouths. The next morning, it got weirder. At the base of each scarecrow was a perfect little circle of corn kernels. Neat, even piles, like someone had measured them out. I asked about it. Ruth just said it was an old way. Didn't explain what that meant. A few of the older folks looked nervous. One guy, Mr. Greeley, I think, muttered something under his breath and walked off. By that evening, I started locking the doors without even thinking. 2 nights before Halloween, I was driving home around 10 when I saw something hanging from a branch near the woods. It caught my headlights. Something pale swinging slowly. I slowed down and leaned toward the windshield. It was a scarecrow head, one of them. Rope tied tight around the top, spinning gently like it had been hung, just swaying there in the breeze. I stopped, got out, walked toward it, but it was gone. I thought maybe I'd imagined it. But the branch had fresh scrapes on it, rough bark worn smooth in one long line, like something heavy had rubbed it raw. The next day, all 7 scarecrows were right where they'd always been, no heads missing, no signs anything had been disturbed. Ruth said maybe I saw a plastic bag. I didn't argue, but I stopped driving that way after dark. The night before Halloween, we gathered again to hang the last of the lanterns and test the spotlights. Everything had to look perfect. Ruth was more on edge than usual, snapping at volunteers, pacing with that clipboard like it was a lifeline. She sent me to fix the welcome sign near the main path. While I was crouched over hammering it back into place, I heard footsteps behind me. Not fast, slow, and heavy, like boots walking over hard dirt. I turned around. The feed sack scarecrow was closer than it had been earlier. I measured it with my eyes. It had moved 5 feet, maybe more. I stared at it, waited. Nothing moved, no sound. I called out, no answer. Then Ruth shouted my name from the truck. I turned to look. When I turned back, the scarecrow was in its original spot. I checked the dirt. No prints. Just a faint trail of loose straw where it hadn't been before. I didn't mention it to anyone. just finished my task, and left. That night, at midnight, the lights on the ridge went out, all at once. Not a power outage, the rest of the town was still lit, just the ridge. Then came a knock on my door. Not a knock exactly, one hard rap, then silence. I froze. A minute later, another sound, softer, more like something brushing against the wood. I grabbed my flashlight, opened the door. No one there. Just that smell. Same rotting sweetness drifting in from the trees. I locked the door and left the porch light on until sunrise. Halloween day arrived cold and gray. Ruth called early. Said someone had vandalized the ridge. When I got there, 6 of the scarecrows were wrecked. Arms snapped, straw scattered, ropes torn. The 7th? Still standing. The feed sack figure hadn't moved an inch. But the ground around it was marked. Not tracks, patterns. Loops and spirals pressed deep into the soil. Too precise to be random. Too tight to be made by boots. Nobody wanted to talk about it. We cleaned it up. No one asked why. That night, the town square was packed. Kids ran around in costume. Bands played. Fireworks burst over the ridge in timed patterns. For a few hours, it felt normal again. Safe. Then I noticed it. A soft orange glow on the ridge. Not fire, not lanterns. It pulsed, slow, steady. I pointed it out to Ruth. She told me to ignore it, said it was just part of the display. But after the fireworks ended, I looked again. There were figures up there, moving, swaying. More than 7, more than I could count. They shifted from side to side, arms out, reaching. For the town, for us. I told myself it was the wind. Then, one turned its head. The firelight caught its face. Stitches shone wet and sharp. The grin was no longer now, pulled wide like someone had kept sewing past where the mouth should end. I didn't say goodbye, just got in my truck and drove. Didn't stop until I was 3 towns out, didn't even remember packing. When I called Ruth the next day, she said the ridge was empty. No scarecrows, no posts, just flattened dirt, like it had been swept clean. The sheriff said it was probably local kids pulling a prank. Ruth just said, the wind was strong this year. I moved 2 weeks later, thought that was the end of it. Then, a week after I unpacked, I found something on my new porch. A bundle, wrapped in a gray feed sack, tied with black twine. Inside was a handful of dry corn kernels and a wooden button. The spiral carved into it matched the marks in the dirt on the ridge. I moved again the next day, but every Halloween since, no matter where I am, I find the same thing. Just a few kernels, always in a perfect circle, always by the front door. Halloween's always been different for me, not because of costumes or parties or candy. That stuff never really stuck. It was more about the ritual of it, the stillness, the way the air felt like it was holding its breath, and the woods got this weird old feeling like something was waiting. When I was a kid, growing up way out in southern Appalachia, my dad used to light porch lanterns every October and tell us stories. Not bedtime stories. These were the kind that made you keep your feet under the covers and your eyes on the windows. He called them ridge spirits. Said they came down from the high trees once a year just in October, just to check if folks still remembered them. They didn't like being ignored. He'd say that part quietly. Never smiled when he told those ones. After he passed, I took over the lanterns. One for him, one for the ridge. That was the deal. But last October, I decided I was going to do more. Maybe I was missing him more than usual, or maybe I just wanted the house to feel like something lived in it again. It had been too quiet for too long, so I decorated. Nothing fancy, just the kind of stuff we had lying around. I carved a few pumpkins, hung up the old lanterns along the porch beam, and then I went out to the shed and found one of Dad's flannel shirts, blue and gray, soft from age. I used it to make a scarecrow, stuffed it with hay from an old bale that had been sitting behind the barn for who knows how long, made a head out of a burlap sack, stuck a button in for one eye, sewed on a patch for the other. It looked like something you'd find slumped in a forgotten field, and I kind of loved that. There was something about having it out there near the edge of the gravel loop that made the house feel a little less hollow. I tied it up tight to a wooden post facing the road, just where the driveway curves down toward the tree line. Stepped back to admire it and noticed the head was tilted a bit left. Not a lot, just enough to make it look like it was watching the woods instead of the road. I didn't like that. So I walked back over, straightened it, tightened the rope around the neck and shoulders. Told myself not to be weird about it, but I did glance back twice before heading in. Next morning, I looked out the window, and sure enough, the head was tilted again. Same direction, same little angle, still staring off toward the trees. I figured maybe it was just the way I tied it. The rope hadn't moved, and we hadn't had any wind that night. But I didn't like the way the sack looked in the daylight. It had gone darker. Not like dirt, more like damp cloth that had soaked up something. But it hadn't rained, and the sky had been clear. Still, I ignored it. Told myself I had work to do. That evening, I went a little bigger. Lit both lanterns just before dark. Carved 3 more pumpkins. Took me hours, and lined them along the porch rail. Their faces were different. I don't know why that mattered, but I didn't want them all smiling. One was frowning. One had no mouth at all. I finished just as the light started to fall away, and the woods got that empty sound. Not quiet, just empty. The kind that makes your ears feel like they're straining for something. I looked out past the driveway. The scarecrow was still there. Still slumped on the post, head tilted. That should have made me feel better. It didn't exactly, but I told myself it did. Went to bed early, didn't stay asleep long. Around 2 in the morning, I sat straight up in bed. I thought I heard a knock, not loud. Just one, soft and quick, like someone testing the wood. I got up and looked through the front window. Couldn't see anything. The yard was still. Then I noticed one of the pumpkins was missing. Just gone, middle one. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped out onto the porch. The cold hit me right away, heavier than before, damp in a way that stuck to your clothes. I scanned the yard and saw the missing pumpkin sitting upright by the scarecrow's post, just sitting there in the dirt, facing the woods. I walked over and picked it up. It was warm, not like it had been out in the sun, but like someone had been holding it. I didn't want to think too hard about that. Carried it back to the porch, set it in its place, and tried to write it off as some animal. Before I went back in, I glanced back at the scarecrow. And that's when I saw the head wasn't tilted anymore. It was bent forward, looking straight down, right at where the pumpkin had been. And the flannel shirt, it looked full, bloated. Like the hay inside had been packed tighter, pushing against the seams. I didn't remember it looking that heavy before. I didn't sleep much after that. Next couple of days, I avoided the scarecrow. Didn't go near it. Didn't look directly at it when I passed the window. 2 days later, I drove into town to get feed and some supplies. Didn't rush. Didn't even think about it until I came back and noticed the post was empty. Scarecrow was gone. The rope was still hanging, frayed at the end, cut clean through like with a knife. I froze, did a slow walk around the yard, checked the ditch, the shed, even under the porch. Nothing. Then I heard a dragging sound behind the barn. Not loud, just slow and rough, like something heavy being pulled across wood. I went around and yanked the barn door open, and there it was, standing, not leaning, not slumped, just standing against the far wall, like it had walked there. The sack had drooped to one side. The mouth, it had been torn wider, jagged, like someone had pulled it open by hand. New twine at the wrists. Fresh hay, darker now, stuffed so tight into the sleeves it bulged. I didn't hesitate. I pulled it down, dragged it to the burn pit and lit it up. Stood there watching as it caught. The flames licked up the legs first, then the chest, then the head. At first, it smelled like grass and old clothes. Then it changed, got thick, oily, sweet and sick, like something that had been soaked too long in something dead. When it was over, I scraped the ashes into the dirt and covered them. I didn't say anything, didn't pray, just went inside and locked the door. But that night, just after midnight, there came 3 taps on the porch rail. Tap, pause, tap. Tap, pause, tap, then silence, then the dragging sound again. That slow scrape, not across the yard this time, across the wood of the porch. I grabbed the flashlight, turned it on, aimed it through the front window. The pumpkins were back. All three, but their faces had turned. Each one was now facing the house. Their grins were warped, mouths curling, edges slick and dark like they'd been burned from the inside. I opened the door just a crack and looked down. A bundle of hay lay across the threshold. It was damp, and it smelled first like the back field, then beneath that a sharp scent, smoke, burlap. I slammed the door and slid the bolt. Sat up the rest of the night in the armchair, light on. Didn't hear anything else. When the sun came up, I finally opened the door. The pumpkins were gone. The rope from the scarecrow post had been coiled neatly on the porch rail. 3 loops, each one tied tight, each one the size of a noose. I didn't wait for anything else. I packed a bag and left before the sun reached the ridge. Didn't even clean up, just locked the door and walked away. Every October, my family got way too into Halloween, like really into it. Our whole town did, honestly. Marlow Ridge isn't big, just a few hundred people tucked into a bend of the Appalachian foothills. But we treat Halloween like it's a full-blown season. The church runs a harvest fair. The school has costume contests, and the main street turns into this weird, charming mix of scarecrows, cider stands, handmade lanterns, and way too many hay bales. It's the kind of thing that feels old, like it's been happening forever, even though you know someone started it maybe 50 years ago just to give the kids something to do. My Aunt Elsie was one of the main organizers. She handled the decoration booth for the church, which meant she spent most of October up to her elbows in tangled lights and crates of dusty props. That year, she asked me to help. My uncle was away with a road crew near Green Holler, and she didn't want to fall behind on setup. I was in my last year of high school and didn't have much going on, so I agreed. Besides, I kind of liked it. It was quiet work, sorting things, fixing old pieces, filling space that would have otherwise just been me, alone with my thoughts in a house that got too dark too early. She kept everything in this old shed out back. It sat maybe 30 yards past the crabapple trees, just off the edge of a patch of patchy lawn and sloping dirt. The shed had started to lean to one side, like the ground had shifted under it years ago and no one bothered to fix it. It had one dusty window that barely let in light and smelled like cedar planks, stale air, and dried paint. Some of the boxes in there were older than me. That day, I was out there most of the afternoon. Just me, a pile of decorations, and whatever weird silence fills up a place like that once the world starts cooling down for winter. I found the usual stuffed foam tombstones with chipped edges, orange extension cords knotted into unsolvable puzzles, bins of masks with frayed elastic and peeling paint. Some of them were downright bizarre, like hand-painted faces that looked cheerful from one angle and unsettling from another. There was this one mask with a lopsided smile that made my skin crawl every time I looked at it. The longer I stared, the more off it felt. Like whoever made it didn't quite understand how faces were supposed to work. Around 5, my aunt called from the porch. She wanted to know if I'd found the scarecrow's hat yet. I hadn't, but I shouted back that I'd keep digging. That was when I noticed something wedged deep behind a crate of fake pumpkins and broken garlands. It was a mask, but not like the others. This one was wooden, rough, carved, not molded. It looked like it had been made with a pocket knife or something equally dull, all splinters and uneven lines. The eyes were too close together, and the mouth stretched into this sharp, wide grin that looked more like a wound than a smile. There were scratches around the edges, especially by the mouth, like someone had tried to sand something off or erase a carving. It didn't feel like the others. Not just in weight, but in presence. The shed was warm from the day's sun, but when I picked the mask up, the wood was cold. I mean, weirdly cold. Like pulling something from the bottom of a creek. I carried it back to the porch, figuring it was some old folk art piece that got tossed in with the Halloween stuff by mistake. My aunt's face changed the second she saw it. She stopped what she was doing and stared, said she didn't recognize it and she didn't like the look of it. Said it had a musty smell, like it had been buried in damp leaves. I told her it was probably just old and maybe interesting enough to use as a booth centerpiece. She told me to leave it outside, didn't want it in the house. I laughed, but I didn't press her. I set it on the porch rail. Figured it could air out overnight and we'd decide what to do with it later. After dinner, I headed back out to finish loading decorations into totes. The sky had gone that deep, blue-black color that shows up fast in the hills once the sun drops behind the trees. There were no streetlights back there, just the faint glow from the kitchen window and the stars coming in overhead. It was quiet, except for crickets and the occasional snap of the twig from the woods behind the property. When I reached the shed, I stopped. The door was cracked open, just slightly. I remembered closing it, not latching it maybe, but definitely pulling it shut. Inside, everything looked more or less the same: boxes stacked, wires spilling out of bins, that one grinning scarecrow slumped in the corner. But the mask was gone. I figured maybe my aunt changed her mind and brought it back in, though I hadn't seen her leave the porch. I stepped out and turned toward the house, ready to call out, when I heard my name. Soft, low, right behind me. It was her voice, or at least it sounded like her. Every part of it matched: the pitch, the way she said my name, even the little pause she always put before speaking when she was about to give instructions. I smiled at first, thinking she was messing with me. Then it came again, this time sharper, breathless, urgent. It didn't sound like teasing anymore. It sounded scared or angry. I took a step toward the trees before I caught myself. Something about it didn't sit right. That was when I heard her voice again, but this time from the porch. Normal volume, calm, calling for me to help her string lights. Same tone she always used when we were trying to beat the dusk. I froze. Two voices, same woman. One coming from the woods, one from the house. They overlapped slightly, not in echo but in rhythm. One was wrong. I backed away slowly from the shed, eyes flicking between the dark tree line and the porch light. Then the voice from the woods called again, drawn out now, sharper, like it was demanding. The one from the porch followed a second later. I didn't wait. I turned and ran. The yard felt too long, like the grass stretched beneath me. Each step sank too deep. And behind me, soft but real, I heard footsteps. Not echoing mine exactly, but keeping pace. That voice followed too. It wasn't shouting, it wasn't whispering, just calmly saying my name over and over, like it already knew I was running. But the second I hit the porch, when the light washed over me, it stopped. No fade out, no rustle or snap of retreating steps. Just gone, cut off like a recording. My aunt looked up from the lights in her hands and frowned, asked what the hell had gotten into me. I told her, tried to anyway. The words came out tangled, half breathless. She listened, didn't smile, didn't laugh, just nodded slowly and said maybe the sound had carried weird in the hills, but she didn't believe it. I could see it in her eyes. She asked again about the mask, if I'd brought it back in without realizing. I told her no. She didn't say anything else. We went inside and pretended the rest of the night was normal. She went to bed around 10. I stayed up another hour, staring out the kitchen window at the dark edge of the yard. Something about it felt unfinished. I grabbed the flashlight and went out again. The mist had come down from the ridge, making the grass wet and the world quiet. My boots squelched with each step. The flashlight flickered twice, but I kept going. The shed door was wide open. Inside, right in the center of the workbench, was the mask. It was positioned perfectly, facing the door. That grin looked deeper than before, and under the beam of the flashlight. The eyes weren't just hollow. They looked full of something dark, like they absorbed the light instead of reflecting it. My breath caught. I slammed the door and latched it, stumbled back to the house without turning around. Told myself I'd deal with it in the morning. I didn't. Stayed inside all day, helped bake for the booth we weren't going to set up. That night, Just after midnight, there was one knock on the back window. Just one. Heavy, deliberate. Deliberate. I looked down. The yard was empty. The shed door was open. We didn't go to the festival that year. I'm 34, and last fall I got hired to coordinate the Halloween fair in a little Appalachian town called Finchley Ridge. The job fell into my lap at the right time. I was between gigs, low on cash, and honestly, just needed something stable for a few weeks. The listing said seasonal event coordinator with housing provided, and that was enough for me. I didn't ask too many questions. Finchley Ridge wasn't even on most maps, but it had a certain quiet charm. One gas station, a diner with hand-painted signs, and locals who still waved from their porches whether they knew you or not. The community center, where most of my work would be, sat about half a mile off the main road, wedged between a slumping Baptist church and what was left of an old coal tipple, all rusted beams and broken brick. Somebody told me the land used to belong to a family that died out generations ago during a fever outbreak. I nodded politely and pretended to care, but the truth is, it didn't matter to me. I just needed a paycheck and a roof over my head. The building itself was old but sturdy. 2 full stories, built from stone and thick timber beams that looked like they'd been cut straight from the hillside. Inside, there was a gym with bleachers that creaked when you walked past them, a craft hall lined with dusty windows, and a narrow hallway of offices that smelled like old varnish and the ghost of someone's burnt coffee habit. The town council wanted to make the fair bigger this year, draw people in from surrounding counties. So they handed me the keys and told me to make it happen. Decorations, lighting, sound equipment, coordinating volunteers. They even gave me a little room upstairs, probably an old office at some point, with a cot, a lamp, and a mini fridge that buzzed like a hornet. During the day, the place was busy. Volunteers hammering plywood signs, teens untangling string lights, Marlene, my main contact from the town, walking around with a clipboard and a purse full of mints she handed out like bribes. But as soon as it got dark, they all cleared out. No long goodbyes, no lingering, just a vanishing act. I asked Ellis, the maintenance guy, why nobody stuck around after hours. He gave me this tight-lipped smile and said, "People here like to be home by dark." Fair enough. Honestly, I liked the quiet. I worked best when it was just me and the buzz of the lights overhead. But 3 nights in, something happened. I was in the gym, stringing orange lights across the front of the stage, standing on an old wooden stool that wobbled if I breathed too hard. The double doors at the far end of the room suddenly slammed shut behind me. Hard. The kind of slam that shakes the walls and makes your ears ring. I nearly fell off the stool. I spun around, heart pounding, and ran to the doors, yanked them open. The hallway outside was empty, not a soul. And outside, the gravel lot was lit up by the floodlights, but still as a painting. No wind, no movement. I stood there, trying to convince myself it was just a gust, even though the air hadn't stirred at all. Back in the office, I remembered the security cameras. They'd just had them installed. One in the gym, one in the hallway, one in the main entrance. I pulled up the footage. Nothing. No door movement. No slamming. Just me jerking around like a startled animal. The timestamps rolled smoothly. No freezes. No pixel glitches. It was like the sound existed only in my head. The next night? Same thing. Different doors. This time it was the kitchen entrance. Then the back storage room the night after that. Always the same. A sudden slam, sometimes followed by a faint rattle, always with nothing behind it. I started logging them, dates, times, door locations on a clipboard, just to keep track. Ellis saw the list one morning and chuckled, said the building was settling. Something about old pipes and mountain damp, but the volunteers were spooked. One girl said she heard humming through the vents. I told her it was just the boiler kicking on. She didn't buy it. She quit 2 hours later and didn't come back. By the second week, I knew the building like the back of my hand. I could tell which board creaked when I stepped on it and which lights flickered if you used the wrong breaker. So when a new sound started, something sharp and fast like clicking, I stood out right away. It started in the craft hall. A light rapid tap 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 on the hardwood, moving like an animal's claws. I figured it was a raccoon or something. But when I followed the sound, broom in hand, there was nothing. I checked every corner, every vent, even behind the vending machines. No signs, no droppings, no smell. Ellis set traps. They stayed empty. And still, every night after midnight, the clicking started up again. Always the same pattern, craft hall. Pause. Then right behind me. I started sleeping with my shoes on just in case. One night, Marlene stopped by with a bag of paper lanterns and a stack of flyers. As she was leaving, I brought up the noises, half joking, half fishing for an explanation. She just smiled and said, "This place has its quirks," then added, "They say the original family buried their dead up on this hill before the church ever got around to blessing the ground." She laughed, kind of lightly, but her eyes stayed serious. When I came in the next day, there was a bowl of candy corn on my desk and a note in fancy cursive that read, "Keep the spirit sweet." I assumed it was her. Still, I didn't need any. Thursday, we wrapped most of the decorating. We had pumpkins lining the front walkway, paper bats taped up everywhere, and 2 big scarecrows flanking the entrance. They were goofy-looking flannel shirts, straw-stuffed sleeves, plastic pumpkins for heads. But every morning, one of them had moved, just slightly, facing a different way, leaning to the side. One morning its hat was gone. Another day its head was tilted like it was listening. I thought maybe the wind or some kids messing around, but the soil was soft from rain, and there were no tracks, not even boot prints. Just, behind one scarecrow, faint impressions in the mud, tiny toes. Bear? I didn't tell anyone, didn't see the point. Then the old ice chest in the concession stand turned on, out of nowhere. I walked in one night and saw frost lining the rim, like it had been running for hours. A couple of ice cubes were on the counter, already melting. The kicker? The thing wasn't plugged in, wasn't even close to an outlet. I yanked the cord anyway, and the humming stopped immediately. I told Ellis. He raised an eyebrow but didn't say much. That Friday, we held a pumpkin carving night for local kids. It went fine sticky hands, orange pulp everywhere. The last of the volunteers left around 9. When I went to lock up, I found one of the carved pumpkins sitting on the stage, turned backward, facing the curtain, like it was watching from the wings. I flipped it back, finished the rounds, and started walking the halls. Halfway down, the clicking started again, but this time, it was above me, in the rafters. Fast, tap, 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 racing from one end to the other. I stopped, looked up, nothing, not even dust falling. I didn't move for a full minute, just waited. Eventually, it stopped. The final night before the fair, I was there past 2 in the morning, printing flyers, adjusting signage, finishing the last-minute stuff no one ever thinks about until it's too late. In the office, there's this big whiteboard over the coffee machine. We used it to track inventory and supply runs. I was on the phone with Marlene talking about vendor parking when the whiteboard ripped clean off the wall and slammed into my shoulder. Hard enough to knock me sideways, I yelled. She asked if I was okay, but I couldn't even speak. There was no wind, no shaking, no reason. It flew nearly 8 feet. When I checked the camera footage later, nothing. The board didn't move. Not even a wiggle. Just me reacting to something that apparently never happened. The next morning I showed up early to open the place for the fair. Every scarecrow was turned around, all of them facing the building. Their straw arms raised slightly, like they were reaching. The candy corn, gone. Just an empty wrapper on my desk. Inside, there were wet footprints. Small, bare, leading from the front doors to the stage. They stopped at the exact spot where that backward pumpkin had been. I wiped them up before anyone saw. The fair went fine. Kids screamed for fun instead of fear. People danced to old country covers. Vendors sold cider and popcorn. No strange sounds. No slamming doors. Nothing. When it ended and the crowd trickled out, Ellis asked if I'd stay to help lock up. I told him I had another job lined up. Handed him my keys. He looked surprised, maybe a little disappointed. Didn't argue. I walked out alone, past the quiet windows and the unmoving scarecrows, down the gravel drive. The air smelled like wet leaves and distant bonfire smoke. When I reached my truck, I turned once to look back. The scarecrows were still facing the building, their heads tilted just enough to look like they were listening. I got in and drove away without checking again. Since then, I've worked other events, Christmas fairs, summer festivals, but I never went back to Finchley Ridge. Back then, my town, Maple Hollow, tucked deep in the Appalachian hills, came alive every October. Everyone went all out for Halloween. Orange lights on every porch, pumpkin loaves traded between neighbors, paper ghosts in the windows of the general store. It was the one time of year when that sleepy valley actually felt awake. That year, my mom decided we were volunteering to help set up the old community hall for the festival. The place sat on a ridge outside town, mostly hidden by bare trees, and nobody had used it much since the caretaker, Mr. Craker, Dorsey, died. He'd lived in a little shack out back and spent half a century keeping the place going. People used to joke that he still did. The first day we went up there, the air inside was thick with dust and that old varnish smell that clings to wood long after it's been forgotten. The curtains on the stage were stiff and heavy, and a narrow staircase leaned dangerously up to a small loft. The mayor said most of the old decorations were stored up there, told us we could use whatever we found. So I went up first with a flashlight, while my mom started sorting boxes below. Each step moaned under my weight. The floorboards felt soft in places, like walking across a trampoline made of wood. I found boxes stacked to the ceiling, some labeled with years: Halloween 1991, Fall Fest 1984, and a few so faded they were just ghostly scribbles. Inside were dusty garlands, old paper pumpkins with cracked faces, masks that smelled like cardboard in attic air. I was elbow deep in tangled lights when I spotted it. A wooden chest half buried under a pile of old fabric. The wood was dark, almost black, with a rusted latch that looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. No label. Just sitting there, waiting. I called down to my mom, asked if I should check it out. She barely looked up. "Sure, go ahead," she said, her voice echoing from below. The latch didn't want to move. I had to pry it open with the flat edge of a screwdriver. Inside was a pile of old costume scraps, and underneath them, this papier-mâché head. It looked wrong. The paint was cracked, the features off somehow, eyes too far apart, mouth cut into a deep grin like someone carved it with a dull knife. It looked homemade, maybe from a school play or something. But the longer I stared, the more uneasy I felt. I laughed it off, told my mom it was probably some ancient prop. She didn't even look, just said to leave it where it was. So I set it aside and kept working. That night, we stayed late hanging lights around the windows and setting up the garlands along the stage. By the time we left, it was after 9. The whole ridge was dark except for the glow from our car headlights. I locked the hall myself and slipped the only key into my jacket pocket. The next morning, I got there early to finish painting the signs. When I unlocked the door, the first thing I saw stopped me cold. That papier-mâché head was sitting right in the middle of the floor, perfectly centered. I hadn't moved it from the loft. The door was still locked. No one else had been there. I told myself it must have fallen somehow, maybe rolled off, though there was no hole or gap between the loft and the main floor. Still, I carried it back upstairs and put it exactly where I'd found it. That night, we came back to hang more decorations. I went up to grab more lights, and that's when I saw it. The head was there, but next to it, another one. Same material, same cracked surface, but the grin was wider this time, tilted crooked. I just stood there, staring, until my mom called up asking for the extension cords. I said I'd found them and got out of there without mentioning it. By the third day, there were 3 heads. Each one a little different. Smiles stretched wider, eyes more forward, like they were learning how to look. That's when I brought my own padlock from home and locked the loft door. The next morning, the padlock was dangling open, the chain coiled neatly on the floor like someone had sliced it clean. I told my mom someone was messing with us, but she just shrugged it off. Probably a prank, she said, but no one else had a key. 2 nights before Halloween, we were finishing up the decorations. Everyone else had gone home, and it was just me and my mom painting signs by the stage. The lights flickered once. Then I heard it, a rolling, rattling sound above us, like a bag of marbles spilling across the floorboards. It stopped, then started again, heavier this time. My mom looked up, frowned. "Probably raccoons," she said, but her voice had that tight edge to it. I reached into my pocket for the key. It wasn't there. I didn't tell her. The next morning, when we showed up, the lights inside were already on. The lock on the main door was still in place. When we stepped in, I froze. On the stage were rows of papier-mâché heads, dozens of them, all painted bright orange now, with hollow black eyes and dripping, jagged grins. The paint was still wet, puddling on the wooden stage. My mom gasped, whispered, "Who would do this?" There were no footprints in the paint. No open cans, no brushes, nothing, just those heads, all turned toward the door like they'd been waiting for us. By noon, everyone in town had heard. The festival committee came up, took one look, and said the place wasn't safe. They blamed vandals until they checked the cameras. Every feed froze at the exact same time, 3:17 in the morning. After that, the mayor had the hall locked up for good. That evening, I saw the janitor load that same wooden chest into his truck. I asked where it was going. He said, "Storage," and drove off. No one ever found out which storage or where. That year, the fair went on outside, smaller than usual. People kept whispering about the hall. No one went back up the ridge. A month later, the janitor quit and left town. When someone finally checked the property that winter, the chest was gone. The stage was empty. Every Halloween since then, someone hangs a papier-mâché pumpkin head on the gate to the old hall. The paint's always fresh. The grin's always the same. No one admits to it. No one touches it. Last week, driving home from work, I slowed down at the bend where you can still see the ridge. The gate was rusted and half collapsed, and hanging from it was that same orange head. Rain streaked black paint down its face like it was melting. When my headlights hit it, I swear it turned just slightly, like it knew I was there. I didn't stop. I drove straight down the hill and didn't look back. And I haven't gone near that ridge since.